Yeah, I'll react to that, sure. Hey guys, I was originally looking for a Isle of Man TT, a racing video that I haven't watched one of those in a while, and I wanted to. But then I saw this, and it's a general sort of video about Isle of Man, which I have not really learned about much. So that's what we're doing. No one recommended, just wanted to do it. The original, war graphics video too.
It's a sentence.
The original link to the video, top of the description. Below that, link to the Discord. Would love to have you. Let's do it. Ooh, this will be cool too. Ooh, I'm definitely subscribing. Let's go. Subscribed. I subscribed. Tyrion Friedman. The original link to the video, top of the description. Below that, link to the Discord. Would love to have you. I hope I didn't say that already.
Far into the Irish Sea, rising above the waves, you'll find an island like no other. A Celtic nation with its own language, home to 80,000 people. Existing in its own universe, where the rules are a little different. It's not part of the UK or Ireland, but it's also not technically an independent nation. A peaceful, isolated haven that's been named the safest place in the British Isles. Welcome to the Isle of Man. 33 miles long and 13 wide, it draws its name from the Celtic sea god Manannán mac Lir. And they say that from its highest point, you can see the Six Kingdoms. England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, heaven and man. Steeped in Viking history and largely cut off from the rest of the world for centuries, today many of its residents are extremely protective of their island and are doing whatever they can to preserve another Celtic language and culture that's at risk of extinction.
Guys, this just sort of reminds me of New England, especially northern New England, more towards northern Massachusetts. New Hampshire I'm talking about the coast. New Hampshire barely has a coastline, and then Maine, of course. You got the lighthouse and the very rocky beaches. There isn't so much the immediate hills.
Of another nice Celtic language and culture that's at risk of extinction. We'd left northern England behind.
We're going to the Isle of Man!
And had returned to Liverpool to catch a ferry that would take us over 100 kilometres into the Irish Sea.
Guys, I'm done pausing after this, okay? Maybe not, but at least for a bit. This always... So yeah, you guys told me about the witch riding a pig, which, makes sense. Especially the pig part. But also, this thing right here, Northern Wales... looks like a lady shooting a gun, or like a soldier with a helmet shooting a gun. And Ireland looks, I'm not crazy, just bear with me. Ireland looks like a chickadee, like a bird, like a small little bird with its wings right there, and the eye, and a teeny little beak. And then the Irish Sea, my last one, looks kind of like a weird cartoonish tribesman's head with a kind of upward ponytail, and then the Isle of Man is the eye, and then here's his nose, and then his mouth is right here. Sorry, okay.
Catch a ferry that would take us over 100 kilometres into the Irish Sea, to Douglas, the capital of the Isle of Man.
Douglas. I love walking on ferries. Or drive on. And you have castles.
Cool. Thank you. And a friend of mine was
The first thing we noticed, this symbol. It's part of the Manx flag, and it was everywhere. 3 legs facing different directions. It's called the Triskelion, or 3 legs of man, and it makes a bit more sense when combined with the Manx motto, which actually is in Latin, not Manx. A loose translation is, whichever way you throw me, I will stand. Next was the signs, with strange unfamiliar words accompanying English ones. In my other videos, you've encountered Welsh and Cornish. Well, here you'll find another Celtic language, Manx Gaelic. It went extinct in 1974 when the last surviving native speaker passed away. But it was revived, and in 2015, around 1,800 people, or 2% of the population here, could speak Manx Gaelic.
Oh, so hop to now.
Hanel Halloween, hop to now. It's a shame in the road. Hanel me 4 van with my gouden.
Then there was the money. The Isle of Man has its own currency, the Manx pound. You can spend British money here, but you can't spend Manx currency anywhere else. There are different rules too. Some legal, like the fact that there's no speed limits outside of towns and villages here, or the rock-bottom tax rates that have made the Isle of Man an infamous tax haven for the wealthy. And some social. You never call the UK the mainland. This island isn't part of the UK. The mainland is the Isle of Man.
What's the reaction here if someone calls the UK the mainland?
It's a no-no. Definitely a no-no. We're the mainland. I was fortunate to go to the Calf fairly regularly, and we used to talk about the mainland all the time. But we'd go back to the Isle of Man, you see. We're on the Calf and we go back to the mainland. It's definitely a no-no.
So instead, people...
Okay, so the only place in the Isle of Man you can say back to the mainland is right there. Makes sense.
Across.
Sorry.
It's definitely a no-no.
So instead, people say across.
I think it's across is sort of the most common way.
Yeah, I'm going across. If you say I'm going across, you generally mean you're going to the UK, adjacent on the radio, they say the adjacent
Isle.
It's another reminder that the Isle of Man is its own entity, and it joins a list of other lingo here. Some suggesting a society that's a bit resistant to outsiders. Those who weren't born on the Isle of Man and moved from across, who now make up just over half the population, are referred to as comeovers, stopovers, or stayovers. Comeovers are anyone who's lived here for less than 10 years. After you've been here for between 10 and 30 years, you're a stopover. And it's only after you've lived on the island for 30 years or more that you're granted the prestigious title of stayover.
I love how so many, this is like the case on Martha's Vineyard too, even Block Island, which is a small island off the coast of Rhode Island, and Nantucket. It's like they all have this very much, we're an islander, they're not, you know, oh, if you don't own a house here and have been living here for 15 years, I'm paraphrasing, then you're not an islander. And so there's a lot of pride around growing up in a secluded or semi-secluded area, obviously.
And if you have a problem with the way things are done here, as the Manx say, there's a boat in the morning. Basically, you can leave. And beyond all that, even the animals here are different. These are Manx cats. Notice anything different about them? They're born without tails. More impressive and slightly satanic looking are the Manx Lockton sheep, which grow incredible horns and can have up to 6 of them each.
Okay, I was gonna be like, why are you calling them that? They don't look that weird. Oh my god. Never mind, Satan.
These animals populate a very unique landscape.
Why is it that just looks like evil? What it's a great, cute little animal, right? But why do we associate that with like?
Animals populate a very unique landscape. High, barren peaks descend into sheltered folds in the hillsides, where lush forests flourish. These protected areas are the Manx National Glens.
I'm assuming because of deforestation, that's why the hills look that way, or that's what someone said in a comment of another video where I said that. I think it was Scotland or England, just a bunch of rolling hills, and that wasn't always that way, but because of human...
Got two of the kingdoms in the distance. That's England over there, and over there is Scotland, behind that headland there.
So why is the Isle of Man so unique? Well, being a small island, it's followed a slightly different path to its neighbours. It was once ruled by Vikings. They set up the Parliament here, the Tynwald, in 979 AD, making it the world's oldest continuous parliament. Back in 1275, when Scotland and England were totally separate and occasionally fighting each other, a Norwegian
Ownwald, or the Parliament Field, a word of Viking origin from the Norse Thingvollr, is the ancient assembly ground where the Manx Parliament and people meet each year in the open air to hear the proclamation of new laws.
When Scotland and England were totally separate and occasionally fighting each other, a Norwegian king, Magnus VI, gave up control of the Isle of Man to Scotland in exchange for some money and recognition of Norwegian rule over Shetland and Orkney, which, as you probably know, didn't last forever. After a series of battles, the Isle of Man flipped back and forth between English and Scottish control until the English eventually captured it for good. It's now a self-governing crown dependency, which is officially described as a territory for which the United Kingdom is responsible. So it has never been part of the UK, but Manx people are British citizens. The British monarch is Lord of Man, and the British government has significant influence over the Manx one and is responsible for its defence. So this unique history, the influence of several different rulers on its culture, and geographical isolation has meant this island developed its own clear identity over the centuries. Underneath all this though, today the Isle of Man seems to be battling time and change. As the world modernised, the movement of people increased, and while that can improve a region's economy, it also drastically changes its identity. Places with larger populations can, to some extent, absorb that change, but smaller populations like the Manx are less resistant to it. So many people here are fiercely protective of the Isle of Man in the face of more new arrivals.
I think I'm a good Manxman. I would fight tooth and nail to preserve what we've got, which we're losing slowly. People growing up, youngsters growing up, don't have the same ideals as I grew up with. The language, the culture, and it's all getting watered down.
I know I want to hear what he has to say, but I'm gonna forget it if I don't stop. I feel like this is going to be a thing that is going to happen. We obviously, I think preserving your culture as much as you can is a great thing, and that's something to be proud of. But I'm sure what a lot of people around the world are going to get used to is the internet itself. Think about accents, right? I think accents are largely going to go away eventually because of the internet. I think that slang words and how you talk is due with the people around you, and you can make these enclaves where the vast majority of the people you interact with at all is going to be in a certain community. But as people get exposed to the internet, now everyone in this who can speak English, or if you're Spanish, can speak Spanish, you are someone in California is going to be influenced by some of the same pop culture stuff as someone from the Isle of Man, or someone from Scotland or from Australia. And I think that accents are going to go away, and everyone is going to have a sort of shared language. People within languages, at least, are going to have a shared. You get what I'm saying? Is that I think that it is no shock at all that people who are older, who have gone through this internet age and grown up before it, and Even me myself, I was born in '93, where the internet was a thing, but it was not like you weren't going around with an iPad when you were 5 years old, right? So that's a fascinating thing, I think. And so, yeah, I'm not shocked that people are shocked at how fast a lot of cultural ways are going. And just the way that people relate to each other is no longer what it used to be. I am talking too much.
Going to disappear. Culture, and it's all getting watered down. It's going to disappear. The older people in my era were probably more staunch. I'm a watered down version of them, and what's coming after me is a watered down version of me. Lots of people complain about the incomers, the come-overs. People leave over there because of what it's like over there, and come here and then want to change it to what it was over there, which they were glad to get away from.
I would say the Manx people, the older Manx people.
That's interesting.
Which they were glad to get away from.
So it's essentially like, hey, like, whoa, like, we like it over here. I know you guys are all leaving, but don't. He said it. Why do I have to?
The Manx people, the older Manx people, are quite proud, very, nationalistic, and also reserved, I would say. The Manx people can come across very anti other nations. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I think it's sort of an old-fashioned view, which still lingers on a little bit. You've probably heard the phrase like "come-overs" and "stopovers," and "there's a boat in the morning," and all that sort of stuff. There's that weird thing where if you have to be born here and your parents and one grandparent has to be Manx for you to be Manx, and it's kind of ridiculous really, because we've got so many people over here who come over, embrace the culture wholeheartedly. How can you say that they're not Manx?
I think it's okay, especially if you put yourselves in the shoes of the older people. I understand why they feel that way, and I think people should understand why they feel that way, but it's also inevitable. There's no stopping it.
I don't complain about anybody coming here. Long as they assimilate. They come here and they take on what we've got, do what we do, and not try to change.
But while there are worries for the future of Manx culture, there is an aspect of Manx identity that's making a bit of a comeback. The Manx language.
Again, I respect what he says, but I also think that
there'll be people maybe 30, 40, 50 years ago who thought it had died out because they'd never heard it.
Now, I would say I was in my late teens and early 20s before I actually realised that we had a Manx Gaelic, a Manx language. And I started to go to Manx classes, and then suddenly all things started dropping into place. There'd be place names and farm names.
Makes sense.
Once I started learning colours, Ben is white, Do is black. We got Slough Do, and you suddenly say, that's Slough is Mountain, that's Black Mountain, and that was a revelation to me, not knowing that we had a Manx language and all these funny little sayings that I thought were slang.
So when my dad was growing up in the 60s, it was kind of classed as a poor man's language, and it was discouraged completely. So the numbers dropped significantly.
Adam and Joe are very involved in the language revival effort. But one of their biggest hurdles is convincing people that Manx is worth speaking.
One of my friends actually said to me, so do you and Adam speak Manx at home? And I said, yeah. And she said, why? When no one can hear you. I was like, we don't just speak Manx when we're out just, to promote it. I said, it's just, we speak it and it's our language, so why not talk it?
And that's from Manx family.
Yeah.
Joe's friend there is Manx through and through, the whole family, but they just don't attach the value of the language as part of their culture. Yeah. It's still seen as a kind of a plastic Mickey Mouse language, do you know what I mean? And pointless, really. They don't attach any value to it whatsoever. But on the other hand, they are fiercely proud to call themselves Manx. When you say you learn a language or you're a speaker of the language, there's a kind of a phrase that people use all the time. Well, it's kind of a dead language, that why bother speaking it? But if you lose your language, it's kind of the underlaying fabric, I think, of the culture. So you take away in spoken language, you're taking away all that history, all that culture, all traditions, folklore that goes with it. It's all gone. So it's quite easy for people to dismiss it because they don't understand the value that it actually has as a huge part towards culture.
And I would say that it links everything. We do Manx music, Manx dance, Manx traditions. Oh yeah, we did Manx bingo night for
world first.
So if you do speak Manx, I think it links all those bits together.
They look to Wales.
Guys, I think it's important. I think people on both the, whether it's the older people wanting to preserve the culture or younger people being like, what are you talking about? Why are you thinking like that? I think it's important to not just call them, to understand where they are coming from, and that it's not irrational for them to, be afraid of or saddened to lose what they had growing up in a long history. And it's also important to hear what new people have to say and younger people have to say. And so I think there should be a balance between understanding and also being like, it's sad, but this is how stuff kind of works out. And also, there's a lot of stuff around here, like Native American words like Wampanoag or Wampanog, Kickamuit. A lot of those words around here, Native American type words, that I didn't really know what it meant. And then growing up being and kind of learning about Native Americans and stuff, and that kind of clicked in my head, be like, oh yeah, that's why all this stuff is over here. It's not a perfect comparison, but it just reminded me of it.
I think it links all those bits together.
They look to Wales, where 800,000 people speak Welsh, as a model of success.
The difference between Wales, which is a real success story, and us and other nations like Cornwall, Wales is top down. So Wales, it comes from the government and everybody's bought in, everybody supports it, and it comes top down. I think for Cornwall and us, it's bottom up. And it's hard that, I think, sometimes. It's not easy what we're doing, especially, as I say, coming bottom up. It's not easy, but hopefully
individual.
Strength to strength.
Yeah, and there's been a massive resurgence in the last 20, 30 years at least. Gaelic's never been more prolific now than since probably the 20s. Do you know what I mean? There's more people speaking it now than ever before, apart from a long, long time ago.
After 4 days on the Isle of Man, it felt like we'd barely scratched the surface of a Celtic nation with its own language and a fascinating history. And it struck me as an island being pulled in different directions. On the one hand, the arrival of more and more people from across is changing the way of life here. On the other, there are people like Joe, Adam and John who are doing everything they can to preserve what they've got, and who've even helped bring the Manx language back from the dead. For centuries, these shores have been so far from anywhere that the island was able to develop in a kind of bubble. But now there are ferries and planes and our fully loaded bicycles. And it only takes a couple of hours to get here from Liverpool, so it's not so isolated anymore. And the Isle of Man is attracting more and more people, which makes efforts to preserve the language and culture all the more important. So in such drastically changing times, it didn't surprise me that many residents felt very protective over this small but unique part of the world. Our time here flew by, and before long we packed our things and headed off in the dead of night to catch our early morning ferry, because we were moving on to another country entirely. Ireland was next.
Really good video. I'm glad I found this channel. Oh, post-emptive like. Really cool video. I'm sorry. I feel like I paused a lot and more than I should have. So sorry about that. If you're still around, thank you very much for watching. I'd appreciate any comments. Hope you're doing well, and I'll see you next time. Bye, guys.